I'm Victoria Allen, 26, an international fashion model and brand ambassador. The sequins on my gown caught the spotlight like shattered glass, each bead scattering light across the faces in the front row as I paused at the end of the runway. 10 years ago, I would have given anything to disappear. Tonight, I owned every second of their staring. The music pulsed through the floor beneath my feet, a steady heartbeat that matched my own as I turned, letting the camera flashes wash over me like warm rain. But it wasn't the photographers I was looking for in that sea of faces. It was them. The ones who taught me that beauty could be weaponized, that cruelty could masquerade as honesty, that a 16-year-old girl's heart could shatter so completely that the pieces would cut everyone who tried to put it back together. I could smell the expensive perfume mixing with champagne and the faint metallic scent of camera equipment overheating. The fabric of my dress whispered against my skin as I moved, each step deliberate, each breath controlled. This was my world now, controlled, curated, perfect. The applause erupted as I reached the backstage curtain, but I barely heard it. My assistant Maya was already there with my phone, her eyes bright with excitement. "Victoria, that was incredible. The Versace team is ecstatic," and she stopped mid-sentence, studying my face. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took the phone from her hands, my fingers trembling slightly as I scrolled through the notifications. Hundreds of messages, tags, comments. But one name made my blood freeze in my veins. "Sarah Chun has tagged you in a post." Sarah Chun, head cheerleader. Queen Bee. The girl who held the scissors that night 10 years ago while her friends held me down. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. I clicked on the notification and there it was, a photo from tonight's show, but not one of the professional shots. This was taken from the audience, slightly blurry, catching me mid-turn on the runway. The caption made my stomach drop. "Look who's all grown up. Remember when we used to go to school together? So proud to see how far you've come, Victoria. Hashtag Throwback Thursday, hashtag Proud Classmate." The comments were already pouring in. Heart emojis. Congratulations. People asking how Sarah knew me if we were friends. Each notification felt like a small knife twisting in my chest. Maya was still talking, something about the after-party and tomorrow's photo shoot, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I was 16 again, standing in the school auditorium in my homemade dress, the one my mother had spent weeks sewing by hand because we couldn't afford anything from the stores where my classmates shopped. The dress had been beautiful in our tiny apartment's mirror. Pale blue cotton with tiny pearl buttons my mother had saved from her own wedding dress. She'd worked double shifts at the diner for months to buy the fabric, her fingers raw from the needle by the time she finished the delicate embroidery around the neckline. "It's perfect, baby," she'd whispered as she zipped me up that morning. "You're going to be the most beautiful girl there." But beautiful was relative when you were standing next to girls whose dresses cost more than your family's rent. The memory hit me like a physical blow, Sarah's manicured nails digging into my arm as she dragged me toward the stage, her friends forming a circle around us, like wolves. The sound of fabric tearing. The collective gasp from the audience as I stumbled onto the stage in my ruined dress, the carefully sewn seams split open, the pearl buttons scattered across the floor like broken promises. "Never be beautiful," Sarah had hissed in my ear as the laughter erupted around us. "Girls like you should know their place." "Victoria?" Maya's voice cut through the memory. "Your car is here. The driver's been waiting for 10 minutes. I blinked, realizing I was still staring at my phone screen. The comments on Sarah's post had multiplied. Someone had already found my old yearbook photos and posted them side by side with tonight's runway shots. The transformation was undeniable. The awkward, too-thin girl with the second-hand clothes had become someone else entirely. But as I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against the polished concrete floor, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's post wasn't just nostalgia. There was something calculated about it, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The car was waiting outside, engine running, but as I reached for the door handle, I heard footsteps behind me. Quick, purposeful steps that made me turn around. Standing under the streetlight, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, was Sarah Chin herself. Victoria Allen. Sarah's voice carried the same honeyed poison I remembered from high school, though now it was wrapped in expensive vocal coaching and media training. Or should I say, the Victoria Allen. Look at you. She stepped closer, and I caught the scent of her perfume, something French and exclusive that probably cost more per ounce than my mother made in a week back then. The streetlight cast shadows across her face, highlighting the subtle work she'd had done. Nose job, definitely. Lip fillers. The kind of enhancements that whispered money rather than screamed it. Sarah. I kept my voice level, professional. The same tone I used with difficult photographers or demanding clients. What a surprise. Is it though? She tilted her head, studying me like I was a painting she was considering buying. I mean, we both knew this day would come eventually. The reunion, I mean. Though I have to admit, I pictured it happening at our 10-year high school reunion next month, not at Milan Fashion Week. My blood went cold. The reunion. I'd thrown away the invitation without opening it, but of course Sarah would be organizing it. She'd probably been planning it since graduation, another chance to remind everyone of their place in her carefully constructed hierarchy. I'm not going, I said, reaching for the car door again. Oh, but you have to. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. You're the guest of honor. The girl who made it out. The success story. Everyone's dying to see you. The way she said everyone made my skin crawl. I could picture them all. The same faces that had laughed that night, older now but probably not much wiser. They'd want to touch me, take selfies, claim pieces of my success as their own. We always knew Victoria would make it big. We were so close in high school. I have commitments, I lied. Cancel them. Sarah stepped closer, close enough that I could see the calculation behind her perfectly applied makeup. You owe us that much, don't you think? After all, we helped make you who you are today. The audacity of it hit me like a slap. Help make me? Well, yes. She gestured vaguely at my dress, my face, my entire existence. All that motivation had to come from somewhere. The drive to prove us wrong, to show us up. We gave you that gift, Victoria. The least you can do is say thank you. For a moment, I was speechless. The sheer narcissism of reframing years of torment as some kind of favor left me breathless. But then something else kicked in. The steel spine I'd developed walking runways in front of thousands of people, the armor I'd built from every rejection, every criticism, every moment someone had tried to make me smaller. You think you made me? I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to make Sarah take a step back. You think your cruelty was some kind of gift? I think, Sarah said carefully, that sometimes people need a push to reach their potential. And look at you now. You're everything you never could have been if you'd stayed comfortable. The car door opened behind me, and my driver stepped out. Miss Allen? Is everything all right? I looked at Sarah one more time, really looked at her. Beneath the designer clothes and professional makeup, I could see the desperation. The way her eyes kept darting to my dress, my jewelry, the car. She was still the same girl who had needed to tear others down to feel tall. You know what the difference is between us, Sarah? I said, sliding into the back seat. I learned to build myself up instead of tearing others down. You should try it sometime. As the car pulled away, I watched her shrinking figure in the side mirror until she disappeared into the Milan night. But even as the distance grew between us, I could feel the weight of her words settling into my chest like stones. The reunion. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Victoria? Honey, it's so late there. Is everything okay? Mom. Just hearing her voice made some of the tension leave my shoulders. I need to ask you something about the reunion invitation. There was a pause. You threw it away, didn't you? How did you? Because I know my daughter. And I know what those kids put you through. Her voice was gentle but firm. But Victoria, maybe it's time. Time for what? To go home. To show them who you really are. Not for them, baby. For you. I closed my eyes, leaning back against the leather seat, as the car wound through Milan's narrow streets. I don't know if I'm ready. You walked away from that stage 10 years ago in a torn dress, but you walked away with your head high. You've been ready for this moment ever since. The car stopped at a red light, and in the reflection of the window, I caught sight of myself. The girl in the mirror looked nothing like the 16-year-old who had been humiliated on that stage. But somewhere behind the professional makeup and designer clothes, she was still there, still waiting for her moment. There's something else, Mom. Sarah was here tonight. She found me after the show. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Mom, what did she want? To make sure I come to the reunion, she said. I swallowed hard. She said they helped make me who I am, that their cruelty was a gift. The sound my mother made was somewhere between a laugh and a growl. That girl always did have more nerve than sense. But you know what, Victoria? Maybe she's right about one thing. What do you mean? Maybe it is time for you to thank them. In person. The light turned green, and as the car accelerated, I felt something shift inside me. A decision crystallizing like ice forming on a window. Book me a flight home, I said. I'm going to that reunion, Victoria. And Mom? Call the local news stations. Tell them Victoria Allen is coming home, and she has a story to tell. As I hung up the phone, I was already planning. The dress I would wear. The entrance I would make. The words I would say to each and every person who had stood by and watched while Sarah Chun and her friends tried to destroy a 16-year-old girl's spirit. But as the car pulled up to my hotel, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Looking forward to seeing you next month. We have so much catching up to do. And Victoria? Bring your appetite. We're planning quite a feast. S. The message was followed by a photo that made my blood freeze. It was my mother's diner, taken from across the street. Recent, based on the new awning I'd paid to have installed last month. Sarah wasn't just inviting me to a reunion. She was declaring war. The flight home felt like traveling backward through time. With each mile that passed beneath the plane's wings, I could feel the carefully constructed armor of Victoria Allen, international model, beginning to crack. By the time we touched down at the small regional airport, I was fighting the urge to turn around and fly straight back to Milan. But then I saw her, my mother, standing behind the arrival gate barrier with tears streaming down her face and the biggest smile I'd seen in years. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile, but her eyes held the same fierce love that had carried me through every dark moment of my childhood. There's my beautiful girl, she whispered as I fell into her arms, and for a moment I was 16 again, crying into her shoulder after that terrible night. I missed you, Mom. I missed you too, baby. But look at you. She held me at arm's length, studying my face. You look tired. It's been a long week. No, she said, her voice gentle but knowing. You look like you did the night you came home from that dance. Like you're carrying the weight of the world. The drive through town was surreal. Everything looked exactly the same, but somehow smaller, like a movie set built to three-quarter scale. The diner where my mother still worked double shifts. The high school, where I'd spent 4 years learning that beauty was currency, and I was bankrupt. The community center where tomorrow night's reunion would take place. You don't have to do this, Mom said as we pulled into our old neighborhood. You've already proven everything you need to prove. Have a high. I stared out at the house where I'd grown up, its paint still peeling, the front steps still sagging. Because it doesn't feel like it. That evening, I sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of the girl I used to be. Participation ribbons from track meets. Honor roll certificates. A mirror that had reflected 1,000 tears, and just as many dreams. On my old desk sat the invitation I'd never opened, forwarded by my mother along with a dozen others over the years. Westfield High School Class of 2015 10-year reunion. Then and now, celebrating how far we've come. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone had been buzzing all day with messages from my team. Photo shoots to reschedule. Interviews to postpone. A Vogue cover that would have to wait. But for the first time in years, none of it seemed to matter. What mattered was the text I'd received that morning. Hope you're settling in well. Small towns have such long memories, don't they? See you tomorrow night. S. Attached was another photo, this one of my mother leaving the diner, taken from close enough that I could see the worry lines around her eyes. I called my security team immediately. Ms. Allen. Marcus, my head of security, answered on the first ring. Is everything all right? I need you to fly out here. Tonight. And bring the team. Ma'am, you said this was a personal trip. It was. It's not anymore. The next evening, I stood in front of my childhood mirror one last time, adjusting the dress I'd chosen for tonight. It wasn't designer. It wasn't expensive. It was the exact same pale blue as the dress my mother had made me 10 years ago, but this time it was perfectly tailored, perfectly fitted, perfectly me. You look beautiful, Mom said from the doorway. I look ready. The community center parking lot was full when we arrived, luxury cars mixed with pickup trucks and minivans. Through the windows, I could see the decorations, balloons in our old school colors, a banner welcoming the class of 2015, tables covered in yearbooks and photo displays. Marcus and his team had arrived that afternoon, and they flanked me now as we approached the entrance. Not obviously, they looked like friends, family members, anyone but professional security. But I felt safer knowing they were there. Remember, Marcus said quietly, we're recording everything. Audio and video. Whatever happens in there, we'll have proof. I nodded, took a deep breath, and walked through the doors. The conversation died the moment I entered. Every head turned, every eye focused on me with an intensity that would have made me run 10 years ago. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Victoria. The voice came from across the room, artificially bright and carrying just far enough for everyone to hear. Sarah Chen, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, was making her way toward me with her arms outstretched like we were old friends. Sarah. I didn't move to meet her embrace, forcing her to stop just short of touching me. You look. She paused, her eyes taking in every detail of my appearance. Different. I look like myself. Of course. That's what I meant. Her laugh was too loud, too forced. Come on. Everyone's dying to see you. We have so much to catch up on. She led me deeper into the room, past clusters of former classmates who whispered and stared. I recognized most of them, older now, some successful, some not, but all watching me with the same mixture of curiosity and judgment I remembered from high school. Look who I found, Sarah announced as we reached a table near the front of the room. Sitting there were the same faces that had surrounded me that night 10 years ago. Jessica Martinez, who had held my left arm. Ashley Thompson, who had held my right. Mike Chin, Sarah's younger brother, who had been the one to push me onto the stage. Victoria, Jessica said, standing up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You look amazing. We were just talking about you. Were you? Oh yes, Ashley chimed in. We were saying how proud we are of how far you've come. I mean, who would have thought that shy little girl would become a supermodel? The condescension in her voice was subtle, but unmistakable. They were still doing it, still trying to make me feel small, still trying to remind me of my place in their hierarchy. You know, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet room, I've been thinking about that night a lot lately. The night of our junior year spring formal. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. Oh, that old thing? We were all so young then. Kids do silly things. Silly things. I repeated the words slowly, letting them hang in the air. Is that what you call it? Victoria, Mike said, standing up and moving closer. Maybe we should. Should what? Should pretend it didn't happen? Should act like you didn't humiliate a 16-year-old girl in front of the entire school. My voice was getting louder now, and I could see people pulling out their phones, starting to record. That's not, Sarah started. Should act like you didn't tear my dress. The dress my mother spent weeks making by hand because we couldn't afford to buy one? Should pretend you didn't push me onto that stage and tell me I'd never be beautiful? The room was completely silent now. Even the music had stopped. You want to know something funny? I continued, reaching into my purse. I kept a piece of that dress. Just a small piece, with one of the pearl buttons my mother had saved from her wedding dress. I pulled out a small square of pale blue fabric, faded now but still recognizable. Several people in the crowd gasped. I kept it to remind myself of that night, of how it felt to be torn down by people who were supposed to be my peers, of how it felt to have my mother's love and hard work destroyed for entertainment. Sarah's face had gone pale. Victoria, we were kids. We didn't know. You didn't know what? That I was human? That I had feelings? That your actions would follow me for years? I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. Or, did you know exactly what you were doing? This is ridiculous, Ashley said, but her voice was shaking. You're being dramatic. It was just a prank. A prank. I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to make several people flinch. You know what's funny about that word? It's what bullies always call their cruelty when they get caught. I turned to face Sarah directly. You texted me yesterday. You said small towns have long memories. You're right. They do. And this town is about to remember exactly who you really are. What are you talking about? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. I pulled out my phone and opened the video app. I'm talking about this. On the screen was security footage from the school that night. Footage I'd paid a considerable amount of money to obtain from a former janitor who'd kept copies of everything. The image was grainy but clear enough to see Sarah and her friends cornering me backstage, clear enough to see them tearing my dress, clear enough to hear every cruel word they'd spoken. You see, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the now silent room, I didn't just come here to attend a reunion. I came here to set the record straight, to show everyone who you really are, who you've always been. Sarah lunged for my phone, but Marcus was there instantly, stepping between us. I wouldn't, he said quietly. You can't do this, Sarah hissed. You can't ruin my life over something that happened 10 years ago. I'm not ruining your life, I said, uploading the video to every social media platform I had. I'm just telling the truth. Something you never gave me the chance to do back then. The room erupted. People were shouting, phones were flashing, and Sarah was screaming something about lawyers and lawsuits. But through it all, I felt something I hadn't felt in 10 years. Peace. As I walked toward the exit, my mother appeared at my side, her arm linking through mine. Ready to go home, baby? Actually, I said, looking back at the chaos behind us, I think I finally am home. The real me, I mean. The one who doesn't run from bullies anymore. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. My phone was already buzzing with notifications, the video was going viral, news outlets were picking up the story, and my publicist was probably having a heart attack. But for the first time in years, I didn't care about the headlines or the publicity or what any of it would mean for my career. I cared about the 16-year-old girl who had walked away from that stage with her head held high, even with her dress in tatters. She had been beautiful all along. She just needed the world to see it. 3 months later, I was back in Milan for Fashion Week, but this time I wasn't walking the runway. I was in the front row, watching as my new foundation scholarship recipients, girls from small towns, girls from broken homes, girls who had been told they'd never be beautiful, strutted down the catwalk in designs created specifically for them. The foundation was called Beautiful Always, and its mission was simple: to remind every girl that beauty isn't something that can be torn away by cruel words or cruel people. It's something that comes from within, something that grows stronger every time you choose to stand up rather than stay down. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about your foundation. Congratulations. You really did make something beautiful out of all that ugliness. A former classmate. I smiled and deleted the message without responding. Some people deserve second chances. Others just deserve to be forgotten. But as I watched those girls own that runway with the same fierce confidence I'd learned to cultivate, I realized something important. Sarah Chin had been right about one thing. They had helped make me who I was today. They taught me that beauty isn't about being perfect. It's about being unbreakable. And I had never been more beautiful in my life.